All right, let's get started. We have a great topic today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel discussion on AI in public housing, innovations, challenges, and compliance. I'm Andrew Regali from HAI Group, and I'll be your guide for today's conversation. We have an insightful discussion ahead featuring experts who are actively shaping the role of artificial intelligence, not just in public housing, but in general. So just to kick things off, to kind of get some ideas flowing around, let's have a quick thought experiment. And as we do that, I'll continue kind of with the program. But imagine you wake up tomorrow and an AI assistant has completely taken over one of your daily tasks. Responding to emails, generating reports, handling resident inquiries. What's the first thing you'd want it to do? Go ahead and drop that answer in the chat. I just want to get an idea of kind of how people are thinking about AI use cases in public housing. And while people do that, I just wanted to, before we introduce our panelists, give a brief overview of what's going to be touched on today in terms of generative AI. You've probably heard of AI before in the past, but generative AI is a little different. Unlike traditional AI, which analyzes data and automates tasks based on rules, generative AI can create new content. It's creating new things, texts, images, even videos, based on patterns it has learned. So in the past couple of years, you've probably heard of a lot of different generative AI tools that folks can access for free. ChatGPT is one of them, Google Gemini. There's a lot of different tools out there right now. And a lot of the conversation that we're going to have here is going to center on some of that. Seeing some of the conversation, some of the stuff coming through the chat, great answers coming in. Looks like AI could definitely be saving us a lot from the email overload and paperwork. I think this kind of highlights both the excitement and the apprehension around AI. While it has the potential to improve efficiency and decision making, it also raises important questions about workforce impact, data security, ethical use, and that's what we have these great panelists here to talk about today. So let me jump right into it and introduce them. First, we have Gerald Ciccone, CEO of Housing Opportunity Management Enterprises, formerly known as the Housing Authority of the City of El Paso. He's led that organization since 2008. Gerald has firsthand experience in integrating AI into public housing operations and will share how his organization has leveraged this technology to enhance efficiency and decision-making. Next, we have Joanna Alvarado, Chief Information Officer at Opportunity Home San Antonio, formerly known as San Antonio Housing Authority. Joanna has over 40 years of experience leveraging technology to drive business innovation, and she leads her agency's digital transformation efforts, including implementing AI and other emerging technologies. And finally, we have Jason Scott, partner at Gordon Reese, Scully, and Mazzicani. He joins us to discuss the legal and compliance landscape of AI. Jason advises businesses and companies of all sizes on domestic and international AI laws and frameworks. His practice focuses on AI regulatory compliance, organizational AI management systems, and related data privacy concerns. So thank you to the panel here for being with us today. We really appreciate it. And let's jump right in. Jason, just to set the stage, can you help us understand what the regulatory landscape looks like right now for AI in public housing, kind of what the timeline has been over the last year in terms of what HUD has put out and what's kind of active today?
Sure. So I want to start off by just reminding everybody of something I tend to remind myself. When we talk about generative AI, we are actually talking about something that is producing new content. And I know we all know that at some level, but it is nice to frame the conversation that way. And it's important because these are not tools that we're using and deploying in our work organizations that are just analyzing data. When you prompt ChatGPT for whatever the prompt is, the question, and it gives you something, it is literally giving you new content. And that's just important to remember. So as far as the regulatory landscape, things are changing, and I will talk a little bit later about actually how they're not changing as much as perhaps the news media might portray it as changing, and I'll give some commentary about that. But the Biden administration did issue some memorandums related to HUD and implementing generative AI with regard to certain things, such as tenant screening and advertising. And I'm sure most of the people on this call may just be generally aware of those. If you try to search for them now, you will find that they have been archived. So we do have a different administration. But those policies, and we'll discuss in a little bit, they still really are there in effect because the Fair Housing Act hasn't gone away, and you still have to comply with those requirements. So while things are different, there's much, as we'll discuss, that really has remained the same.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. That's a great to set the stage. Let's jump right into some of the ways some of your colleagues and public housing are using AI right now. So, Gerald, let's start with you kind of in our first segment. Let's walk us through a little bit about how your agency initially decided to adopt AI, what that process has looked like, and then kind of set the stage of where you're at now and how you're using it.
Sure. So, I mean, as I don't know, for those of you that know me, I've been heavily involved in the creation of software for quite some time. As I was rebuilding the phone system, the IVR system, which I had done 4 different times, I realized the limitation of what we had as we started looking at this and in talking to many housing authorities across the United States, asked the question, how many phone calls are you answering? And as we made a shift and we started taking a look, if you go off the traditional phone systems, we realized that we were only answering 20% of the phone calls. And most of the housing authorities, as we talk to them, are answering between 20 to 40% of the phone calls. And so I was faced with the reality of, well, I mean, obviously the IVR system that I was trying to put together, I was trying to put it together where it actually was able to pulling information out and giving it, but you had to go through the whole phone tree, right? Yes, yes, if I'm a resident, 2, if I'm an applicant, 3, if I'm a landlord. And, finally you get to your answer where you are on the wait list at number 7 or 8, and people hang up by then. So we were looking for something that was more efficient and easier to put together. And we came to the conclusion that the answer was artificial intelligence, because it's like a ball. And as you ask it a question, it can move anywhere, not just in an IVR system where it's binary of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if it has access to the data, it can answer any information that is in the data that the person has. So this is kind of how we started working with it. Now, granted, it was something that we were producing, but let me show you some slides of kind of what we have, and I think you'll find it interesting.
Sounds great. Thanks,
Can you
Jerry.
see my screen?
Yep.
Can you see my screen? Okay, so artificial intelligence, when people look at it, they're like, oh, it's ChatGPT. And they think about something that's strictly on their phone. Now, this is powerful. I'm telling you right now, I've uploaded on my phone, I've got the entire Code of Federal Regulations as it pertains to housing. I've got all of my policies and procedures. I basically have, everything I need. I ask ChatGPT any question I have about any lease, and it pops out an answer for me within seconds. That can be done in less than 5 minutes. That's something every one of you can do and have on your phone. This is true generative AI, as it has access to all the data in your database, and it can give the answers to what is the routine questions that are coming in all the time to your staff. And it's not changing my slides. There we go. So I'm going to give you an example right now. So this is a gentleman who's calling, strictly asking for his rent.
Hi, Melanie. I'm Maria, and artificial intelligence here to save you time. My job is to answer common questions quickly, so you don't have to wait. You can ask me about your rent, your waiting list status, or anything else you need help with. If I'm not able to answer your question, I'll connect you to the right person for your specific needs. So, what can we help you with today?
So I received a letter that I was selected for the Robinson property. Where do I go and upload my documents?
You'll need to upload the required documents through your online portal account at www.ephome.org. While you're there, take a moment to make sure your contact information is up to date to avoid any issues. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Yes, I also wanted to ask about the status of my HCV application.
It looks like your housing choice voucher application status is incomplete. Please log on to the online portal to finish your application.
So what if I'm going through a domestic violence situation and I need help right now?
I'm so sorry to hear that you're going through a domestic violence situation. I'd like to go ahead and transfer you to a
Hi,
live
Gloria.
agent for immediate.
Morgan.
Hi, Melanie.
Artificial intelligence here to save you time. My job is to answer common questions quickly so you don't have to wait. You can ask me about your rent, your waiting list status, or anything else you need help with. If I'm not able to answer your question, I'll connect you to the right person for your specific needs. So, what can we help you with today?
My rent.
Your current rent is $231. Starting from December 1st, 2024, your future rent will be $252. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No, thank you.
So what that did, now this is a communication system, right? This is SMS, it's email, it's anything you want it to be. Because it takes every single phone call and answers every single phone call. Only 20% of the phone calls actually need to be handled by a real person. So I went from needing 10 people to answer phone calls to one person. And it dropped the number of people coming into my front office, right? Because they couldn't get through the phone system by 60%. So now I don't need 60% of the people that I had in the front. They can actually work on other things that are more important. And of the caseworker calls, right? So the call is now going to the caseworker. I only have, each caseworker is only getting 3 phone calls a day. Okay. And the phone calls that are coming to the caseworker are real questions that need to be answered by the caseworker. So basically what you're doing in doing this type of communication system is you're taking all of those burdens away, the licking of the stamps equivalent, right? Of getting in, where am I on the wait list? How long is it going to take me to get in the wait list? How do I do an application? And you're solving that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with somebody that never gets upset. And it's freed me up with my people now to do other things, like really hold the hands of people that need help, that are going through domestic violence situations or homeless veterans or whatever it is. The savings in a first year alone, and we're kind of a large agency. We have about 7,000 vouchers, but it's saving me over $400,000 a year just in labor. So this is an example of what you have with the call center. So it actually is, taking a look at your call volume on the bottom here under the red, it'll tell you what the percentage of the calls are for, right? I mean, this is the percentage of the calls for the waiting list, for the application process, for customer service. And you can kind of see exactly how they're all flowing in, how many are being answered, how many are not. And then what it does is it creates a CRM and what that is it gives all the information to, when it does go to a person, it gives all the information to the person that's answering the call. So they know exactly why that person is actually making those phone calls, right? I mean, it knows who they are, it knows where they live, it knows if they're on Section 8, it knows how much their rent is. So they're not logging in to a Yardi or an Emphasis to look this stuff up. It's at their fingertips. So the calls are going like this. So we went from 2 hours or an hour to get to a phone call with waiting to it's now less than 15 seconds per phone call to get to a person. And now I only have one person answering those calls.
Jerry, how does the system verify the caller? Is it by phone number?
Yeah, it's my phone number. And because we put guardrails in, right? So I know we're going to talk about security later. We put guardrails in that it doesn't give any personal information out. So it's not giving out dates of birth. It's not giving out addresses or social security numbers. It creates guardrails. So we didn't create 2-factor authentication, and it seems to be working very, very well. Each call is transcribed. So if you look to the right over here, that's the phone call that's actually the summary. The AI takes a summary of it. We do it in English and Spanish. It summarizes it. If you want the full thing, it'll give you the full document. You can listen to every single phone call. Every phone call at the end of it has a survey that asks them, are you satisfied with that phone call? Rate it 1 to 5. And then, or so 1 to 10. And then the 0s and 1s all go to the desk of the manager every single morning so they can go back and look at it to see what occurred. And then every single phone call is verified that when it does go to a caseworker, that caseworker is responding to that phone call. And so, I mean, this is just, further aspects of it, but.
So Jerry, let me ask you, as you pull that up the screen,
Yep.
how long did it take you guys to ideate and develop this and implement it? Like, it seems pretty complicated. Like how much to give people an idea of the effort that took to implement.
So, and that's the thing, right? I mean, I've got access to some of the best minds in the world for artificial intelligence. All right. I mean, I'm working together with guys with Silicon Valley. I'm in Europe right now, meeting with a bunch of people with artificial intelligence. So, I mean, it's not for, hey, this is how long it took you to do it. There's a company that we work with called Respond IT. And in this, and I can put their phone number in the chat here when you get a chance, and you can call them. You can buy this system. This has been, we helped develop this system, but you can buy the system and you can implement it without having to go through what I went through, right? There are off the shelf solutions for AI that can be implemented.
And for the folks on the call, we'll be sending a follow-up email after this with the recording of the session. We'll include any pertinent details like the name Respond IT and a link to their website, just so you can kind of look into that as well. So thank you, Jerry. Let me pivot over to Joanna and what's going on in San Antonio. Joanna, tell us a little bit about your AI journey in San Antonio and kind of where you guys are at right now. And as I understand, you're kind of going through a little program and education and enlightenment series with your team there now. So yeah, take us through that.
Sure. I appreciate the opportunity. So AI, as we've talked about, has been everywhere. And at the beginning of this, ChatGPT kind of hit the ground running, and everybody was talking about, ChatGPT and robots, and is it going to take over the world? Is it going to take over my job? And we had staff that were coming up to us and asking, what's going to happen with AI? What are we going to do about AI? So we decided to take the approach of creating a series that would introduce AI, right? And would maybe, answer the questions around what everybody was curious about and what are we going to do as an organization. So we wrote the AI Education and Enlightenment series. It became a 3-part series where we, if you can go to the next slide, where we talked about 3 different parts so that we could introduce, I guess, slowly to the organization and really go in and talk to them about what AI was, what are the different types of AI. And if you see there, we had 3 series. First, it was the education, and then we went into enlightenment. And the enlightenment was about enlightening people in what is AI, what is machine learning, what are the different types of AI that are out there, what is an LLM, what is, what are robots doing, how is it going to affect what we do, how can we use it in our business. So part of that was also talking about the fears and the misnomers that are out there. That, the biggest one was, will AI take my job? Are we going to introduce AI that will do that? But what we wanted to, how we wanted to approach this was to bring in Google, of course, because we are a Google house. We want to start with generative AI. We said that later we're going to talk about business use cases and we're going to talk about other technology we might bring in. And we wanted to really let people know that no matter what happens with AI, we still need the human intervention. We still need people to go in and look at the generative AI, look at the output, and understand it so that we can make sure that it is what we want before we send it public facing, before we send any letters. So we focused a lot on generative AI when we first started talking about AI, Google Gemini in specific. And also in the series, we of course had to introduce the guidelines and the policies around it. We also wanted to let people know, let staff know that you're kind of already doing stuff with AI, right? You're already looking at PII, right? You already know how to handle PII, data privacy. We've handled data and reports all along for several years. So you're going to take that same thinking and you're going to also apply it to AI and anything you do with AI. We introduced a software vetting process so that people would be able to go to our help log system, which is like a help ticket system. They could go in and they could actually put in a type and ask for different software that they maybe want in AI, things that they're looking at, curious about, and then my team would go in and answer the questions and be able to help them out with that.
Interesting.
Yes, and then we also talked about what was important is for them to understand that the human condition and the different behaviors of the human brain, AI could not replace, right? We have free will, we have intuition, ethics, emotional intelligence that AI doesn't have. And you can't replace that in our business. Our business is very human based. You know, we deal with our different residents from all walks of life and all levels of computer literacy. So we still always have to have that kind of input, that human input. The generative AI was the messaging was a generative AI is only going to help you. It's going to save you time. We all know that time is a valuable resource, right? It is our most valuable resource. So we can use generative AI to improve operations and everything that we do and touch the entire organization, then we're going to be able to serve our residents in a better way. Okay.
So tell me a little bit about, so you guys are using Google Gemini and you're going to give some examples of what you guys are going to be, some of the use cases that you're using, but tell me about the barrier of getting into AI. Do you need, for an agency, do you need to be a larger agency with a lot more resources? Can you be a smaller agency and do some of the things that you guys are doing in San Antonio? Just kind of set that stage for folks.
Yes, absolutely. We can do that. You can do that with Google, right? Google, you can have different levels of licenses that you can buy, and it will come with Google Gemini. Recently, Google, when we first started, after we introduced the series, I want to go back a little bit. We also had to go buy 35 licenses so that we can start our explorers, right? We put this Google Explorer group together. And we brought them together with 35 licenses that we invested in so that we can really test how this tool will work for us in the future. We brought users from all the different business units and departments, and they started applying Google AI and learning prompt engineering and what it's all about and how it can help them. We asked them to really go back and think about how it can apply to their work. How can it help them going forward? Right. So the explorers did a great job and looking at our test plan. We gave them a full-on test plan. We gave them a help document. We gave them lessons in prompt engineering. We explained that, you're used to Google searching, but prompt engineering is Google searching on steroids, right? And when you learn how to prompt, you're going to be that much better in being able to use generative AI. So to answer your question, any small, large, medium organization can join Google, can get different levels of licenses. You don't have to be enterprise. We're a large housing authority, so we have an enterprise license. So after we introduced the Explorers, Google started actually including Google Gemini in our enterprise license. So recently, we rolled out Gemini to the entire organization at no extra costs. And we did not need those 35 licenses anymore unless we wanted to focus on advanced features. But we were able to introduce it now to the entire organization, not just 35 users. So that's huge. And that's huge for any organization that wants to start using Google Gemini. And we're going to talk about security later, but I want to point out that with Gemini, when you buy an actual business or enterprise license, you can certainly go out and use your domain to protect what you have inside your domain and how you're using Google. So we have not released ChatGPT to everyone in the organization because we're still vetting it and I still don't have 100% trust for it. So we're sticking with Gemini. And Gemini has a very similar, as you know, they all compete, has a very similar site that you can go to called gemini.google.com. You can use your prompt engineering and you can go in and ask it anything you want, just like you can with ChatGPT. But the beauty of it is it's within our domain.
Enterprise system for you guys. Just to let everyone know, we're going to be sharing out these slides. You'll have these tips that Joanna is sharing here on prompt engineering. Joanna, could you go ahead and just briefly share a couple of the business use cases that you guys have? going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because as I mentioned, the explorers were huge. We were so proud of that group because they really went out and applied what they learned about prompt engineering. They really, pushed Gemini to see what it could do for them in their everyday work. And when I was getting ready for this, I went out and talked to our public housing explorers and other folks that really dived into it. And they gave me some really nice examples I'm happy to share today. So one of them is a very complex or a more complex prompt, as you see there in quotes, that was that saying who your persona is, because when you're doing prompt engineering, you're identifying who the persona is, right? And then you're looking at the context of what you're going to ask. So, and then the task at hand and what format you want. Because you tell it you want it in a summary, you want it in bullets, you want it in a graphic, you want it in anything, it's going to probably produce it for you. So what was really unique about this particular prompt was that the user tied it to you can see at the bottom where it says at move out SOP. So it was asking about account balances for people that were moving out. And it wanted a directive for all the community managers, but he tied it to that document that is an SOP. And then within seconds, it was able to provide those results that you see there on the screen. That is just a little snippet of what it produced. I did include the link there that when you get these slides, we'll be happy to share what the response was. So I was really excited about this because this is a perfect example of how a person who has to write this directive has to go out, and he said that it saved him hours of time. Again, time being a valuable resource for all of us. And he's able to go out and provide this directive to the community managers within, seconds, go in and edit it, review it, and make sure that it has the right tone and everything that he wants, and send it out.
Well, we've got another one here.
I do.
Simpler, but a translation, which is obviously useful.
Absolutely. So everyone knows, or those familiar with the Inspire inspections that are coming up, a lot of it is new about it, right? And we wanted to be able to translate instructions around Inspire from English to Spanish easily. And so if we're going to send this out to the public, then of course we would review it, but we could do it pretty easily and faster for sure. You can translate to any language. We of course use Spanish here because it's very prominent in San Antonio, and we don't have to necessarily use a translator vendor. We don't have to wait for the translation, which is again saving that valuable resource of time. And this individual told me that in writing this, he normally may have to wait a week for someone to get to the translation. Because he is not a Spanish speaker. He doesn't do the translations and he's a very busy person. He was able to do it within seconds. So he was so excited about how this can help him with different letters and things that they need to translate pretty quickly.
We've got another translation example in here.
Yes, and then so the other translation example is for like internally, we have some Spanish speaker maintenance workers. We have maintenance training, and it is already written, right? We use it every day, and he literally could go in and change that training to Spanish again very quickly, saving time and allowing for him to go do other important work around our REAC inspections, work orders, and things like that. And the last one, of course, is an effective use of building an SOP. We all know we build a lot of SOPs, and if he wanted to formalize his drone program, wanted to be able to provide the organization that the objectives and everything, a comprehensive program around what we do with drones. So he was able to do that, saved him 2 to 3 hours of time.
That was great. Thanks for sharing those examples, Joanna. Just as a follow-up, because Gerald mentioned, with the phone system, there's some statistics that they can look at. There's a dashboard. Do you guys have some type of dashboard or statistics or any information on like the type of requests that the folks that are authorized to use this in the organization are making, or how it's being used? Like any metrics you can leverage?
So in specific for our phone system, that Jerry is absolutely right. It is a challenge for all of us, and it's so impressive and exciting to see what he has done. We took a different route, but I'm still talking to Jerry about what he did. We took a different route in that we use we have a phone system, a cloud phone system, Ring Central, and they have a call center solution which includes AI components. And so we went that route to start improving how we handle phones, implementing omni-channels, implementing AI, things like that. Before that, we didn't even have a call center. We had people that were literally trying to answer over, 12,000 calls in 1 month. Is nuts. It is just nuts. So we're approaching it that way. It does have an AI component. We are going to be introducing chatbots and also IVRs as we walk through the implementation of this. And
How
with that
about for
comes data.
like the prompts you mentioned before? Is there a way for you guys on the back end to see how many prompts have been put through the system in a given week or something like that? And can you see the prompts that like employees are putting in, or are you kind of blind to some of that?
Right. So we're coming into that. But one of the approaches that we are taking as part of our vision going forward is part of the series that I mentioned was that we talked about using LLM, using different tools. Google has come up with a couple tools that we're just learning about, which is Notebook LM and Google Gems. And they are going to, but the biggest thing is the LLM. We're already playing with what we're calling Ronald.ai, and that's affectionately named after our manager of software development. And him and his team are already starting to dive into. I do have developers. Not everybody does, like Jerry was saying, not everybody has the opportunity or has that kind of access. But we want to be able to use the LLM technology that comes with Google as well. And feed it, because you can feed it any document that you want, any video, any PDF, anything you want. It starts learning you intelligently, and you can ask those questions. So the goal is that we're going to have our customer service reps be able to use it and answer the questions that normally they may have to go out to a lead or look at their notes or go into a document or a manual or any other options that they have to be able to get those answers. Plus, they go through extensive training. So we're hoping to minimize that training time as well so that it will help with the retention of our customer service reps. So with that will come analytics. And when we're introducing the CCAS system, it comes with quite a bit of analytics as well. That's really going to drive and inform us as we grow into this, possibly using the LLM in the future.
And Andrew, if I might,
Yeah.
one of the things that I think everybody needs to think about, and especially with housing authorities, we're a money-based business, and that I don't have enough money to pay enough people to do the work that needs to be done. And if you start to break down a housing authority as to where you're spending your money, then that's where the money should be deployed to develop AI. For example, what is your loss to lease, right? How much money are you not collecting based on collections? What are the efforts that you're taking to collect? Are you knocking on doors? How much time does that take? Are your people answering the phone calls in the field, right? So a communication system, as we started taking a look at this, we've got quite a few units, right? But we're losing millions of dollars a year by not doing collections. And I can't tell, because I use third-party management, who's answering the phone calls. Are they answering the phone calls? Are they scheduling leases? Are they doing this stuff? So this phone system is actually being deployed next week into our units to watch the third-party property management companies on whether they are or are not answering the phone calls. It's going to start collections. It's going to start handling all the maintenance requests, right? So right now, we have a third-party maintenance company that's taking all these calls after hours that we're spending money to. I'm not going to do that anymore. So if you start to really look at what artificial intelligence can do, it can increase the customer service and decrease the cost all at the same time. And this isn't just phone systems, right? It's chatbot, it's email, it's text, it's everything, right? So any way that you want to do this, and it frees up the manager to do what they need to do, which is walking the units, making sure that, you know, you're doing the inspections, all those things that you have to get done, but you're wasting all your time because you're chasing after somebody to pay the rent, or you're trying to answer the phone calls as they're trying to come through. And so, you know, as you look at this stuff, I mean, there's so much that it can do and will be doing in the future. And so I know, you know, one of the questions is, are we afraid of the future? And I'm telling you right now, my people are embracing it. I mean, you're talking to a housing authority that has gone through massive transformation, right? With going through RAD and everything else and blah, blah, blah. But right now, they don't have to do the menial work. They're able to do the real work of what they were hired to do, use their big brains, their educated brains in order to make these things happen. And that's the power of what AI is. And it's not something to be feared. And every time I come on and I do a panel like this, everybody's always afraid for their jobs. It's not that. There's more than enough work, but it's going to be a different job. It needs to make that change, right? And that's what we're trying to do here with this particular communication system, and then the software that we're developing down the line.
Perfect. Thank you for that. That's a great transition. You mentioned that AI can do a lot. Jason, can we trust AI? How can we trust AI? Like, you know, give us some context on that and take us into a little bit of the considerations folks should have in implementing AI, small, big, medium, or large. You know, what are some guidelines everyone should be thinking about?
Yeah, this is great because by going last and talking about regulations, we've seen some use cases and talked about how you can implement this. But to step back for a minute and just take a moment, if your organization, regardless of the size and regardless of how you're going to do something, whether it's a bot or a phone system, or you want to develop and go really full tilt and develop your own LLM, there are certain guiding principles that you should be aware of. And then there are questions that you should ask to implement this. And I'm going to run through those very quickly with you. And we started off by asking about, well, what about the regulatory landscape? How is it changing, or how is it different? We have different administrations and we're seeing more laws come into effect. All of that's true. And while there are differences, I would suggest there really are, and this is literally worldwide, there are some basic principles for, and the buzzwords are responsible and trustworthy AI. We heard Gerald say before the phrase guardrails. You could think of it in the same way. So I'm going to run through those principles really quickly and then talk about questions that leadership and stakeholders should be asking as they implement this. So kind of theory and practice both. So the 7 principles that I want to talk about are really laid out in all sorts of either statutes or frameworks. And we're talking everything from the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, which is our Department of Congress, the EU AI Act, and even Biden and Trump's executive orders all touch on very similar themes. And here they are. The first one is human agency. You have to have humans in control of the AI, period. It cannot do its own thing. Robustness and safety. It has to be reliable in its performance, and it has to be robust. And that means it has to be consistent over time. You cannot have your AI system giving answers that are inaccurate or wrong. It has to perform consistently through testing. You have to address privacy and data governance. Do you have a privacy policy and data protection? Did you develop not just this AI system itself, but your implementation with an eye towards privacy? It has to be transparent. You have to be able to explain if something went wrong, how did the AI make that mistake? If you can't explain that, that's a problem. And that's one of the biggest issues that we see with organizations adopting things. They could say, well, this is an amazing product, but if I can't explain it, if something went wrong, how am I supposed to use it? And there are ways to address that. Diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness in its development. Of course, we don't want bias in these outputs. Societal, environmental well-being. AI systems, if you're using chips in particular, use a lot of energy. Most uses here that will not be a consideration, but it's one of the factors. And finally, accountability. Is the organization going to take responsibility for some adverse impact on somebody if the AI system gave a biased result. Those are the 7 principles that are really guiding worldwide right now the regulatory environment that we're seeing. And just so people have some context, we're seeing that's the EU AI Act, that's Korea's AI Act, that's California's proposed statute, it's Colorado, and it's going to be, if it passes, Virginia's law. So the theme is very common here. So the questions that leadership and stakeholders want to begin to ask themselves to implement those things are, start off, do you understand the laws and regulations that affect the use of AI? Is it a high-level risk? Is it a low-level risk? Have you consulted your legal team and your risk management departments? Do you have policies that document the origin and history of your training data and safety measures? These are things that you really have to be, it's very metric. You have to be able to explain. This goes back to the accountability and explainability. You need those policies in place. Do you have a risk management system in place that's going to monitor and review the use of your AI? Not just how you're setting it up, but also the daily deployment. Jerry, I thought that was amazing to bring up the transcript summary of the calls, that you could even listen to it. You can go back, you could really conduct an in-depth analysis of your use through that tool. Do you have an AI system inventory? Who can use it? When can they use it? And what systems do you have in place that are using it? Do you have employees who are using ChatGPT without your knowledge? Those are really important questions that you have to address in the policies as you create them. Do you have a way to deactivate the AI system? If something's really going wrong, can you pull the plug on the whole thing and go back to what might be the old way of doing things until things are resolved? That's really an important consideration. Do you have defined organizational and leadership roles? You are seeing the rise of chief AI officers, like CTOs and CIOs. Do you have a person in your organization who is responsible for the monitoring and implementation of your AI systems? It's really important in your risk management framework. Do you have a terms of service? And do you have a privacy policy? Really important. If you have a website or you're selling a product, you certainly have those 2 things. But do you have it here in this context? Are people aware of what they may be giving to an AI system if they make a phone call or if they do use it? Or do they have some type of notice? And this is with an eye towards the privacy guidelines or concerns. Are you training your employees in not just how to use this stuff, but also to keep those guardrails in place throughout its AI lifecycle? Audits and evaluation of the AI outputs, safety, privacy, bias, discrimination, intellectual property rights are all big picture concerns that really need to be addressed in your organization's policies. And finally, the big one, of course, is cybersecurity. How are your AI policies complementing or working with your cybersecurity type of policies? So if there is a data breach, and we all see these huge data breaches of cryptocurrencies or personal health information or protected information that's being exposed, AI is really adding a layer of complication to that. And as Jerry described when he opened up, I thought it was great the way he described the agent, which is the phone system, interacting with a database and the LLM. That's called an API or agent. It's an application processing interface. And the way that works is it interacts with a database of information about your tenants or your residents and a large language model who is analyzing the language prompts that you're saying through that phone. And those systems are talking to each other. And you do definitely have privacy concerns if that API or interface is accessing that person's data when it recognizes that phone number. And as Jerry mentioned, he has guardrails in place to make sure that it is not communicated externally to the system. However, that's not a guarantee. You have to make sure that that's true. So I just ran through those quickly, but you just got the really guiding principles on a worldwide level and some of the questions, and there's really a ton more, but just some considerations to start to begin to think about as you're developing and implementing your systems.
Thank you, Jason. That's amazing. And I have one quick follow-up for you before I send it over to Joanna to talk about policies, because she is working on a policy right now or has a policy in place, and she can tell us a little bit about how she put that together. But you had just told me the other day that you had read through like a whole ISO book on AI. So for the folks on this call, are there any like relevant certifications or training that you would suggest for a good compliance overview on AI?
Yeah, there's two I would recommend if you're going to take a deep dive, and it is a deep dive. One is it's called ISO 42001. That is the AI risk management framework standard that is put out by the ISO. And the other one is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Okay, they have, you can just Google it. It's called AI Risk Management Framework. If you type in search, it'll literally come right up, and you will see really broken down tons of information about a risk management framework to help you implement these types of AI systems. Both of those are kind of the standard right now. There are others, but like I said earlier, those 7 guiding principles, that is the common theme throughout all of these risk management frameworks.
Perfect, thank you. That NIST one, the NIST one, I imagine may come at no cost potentially since it's through the government, but we'll confirm that, and we'll include these in our follow-up email as well. Joanna, tell us about how your agency approached a policy governing AI.
So we did a lot of homework. We went out and looked at a lot of the different entities that were already starting to write their policies, the city of San Jose, Boston, and then we use the NASCIO blueprint and different. So we went and looked at quite a few of the different policies and guidelines that were being written at the time. And then we started piecing them together. And I'm happy to say that the 7 principles that Jason went over, I think that we got them. I think we have them covered in our policy that right now is in with the executive team that we're reviewing to finalize. But we focus on the human-centered design, similar to what Jason said about the human impact, right? And how it's important that there's always the human element that's involved with anything that we do. Safety and security, PII, making sure that we maintain confidentiality, security, and integrity. And then we also did some research with NIST and the risk framework and CISA, I believe. So there was a lot that we went out. So we have the bigger document, if you will, that definitely has and touch points on a lot of these frameworks that Jason mentioned. But we also know, our user and our staff community, our user community, right? And we know we want to always resonate with whatever we do so that when you able to resonate with what's relevant to them, they're able to actually absorb it and really, take it in. So we developed easy guidelines that take into account the policy, and we created do's and don'ts, right? That were around bias, that were around integrity, around PII, so that, we said, do this, don't do this, so that they clearly can have an understanding and maybe absorb the policy a little better and take it in and then effectively use it when they're applying AI. And again, we related it to what they do already today with data and data governance, because we do have a data governance process that we've been working on the last 3 years. And PII has been a big part of that. It's part of our handbook. So it's already part of our everyday fabric of understanding the importance of protecting our data, right? And AI is just another tool that they need to apply and think about as they're using AI. So it's kind of the approach that we took for our policy and for our policy.
Thank you for sharing that. Jerry, I want to circle back with you because we have a bunch of questions on the phone system. There's a lot of interest on the phone system. How do you, could this be used for more than just residents? Like a landlord would be able to call into it and get some information on different units? And is that a use case that you guys have right now, or?
Yeah, it does that. It has conversations with like when your recertification is gonna happen, when your inspection is gonna happen. We haven't set it up yet to be taking information in. We've been doing it, the other way because we're trying to roll it out a little bit broader. But yes, eventually, I mean, we believe that every application should be done over the telephone.
And then what happened? So like some people in the comments and the questions, they've been kind of likening it to like if you call into your bank and it's kind of like a phone tree. Is it similar to that, or this is not like that?
So I mean, I've actually been very disappointed with what the banks and everybody has. There's a couple shining stars, but overall, it's really fascinating in that people are learning that the true AI isn't just vocabulary based, right? We just say representative, right? I've listened to this thing actually have a conversation with somebody about how an appeal works for a termination. And it did it. I mean, being an attorney myself, I listened to it. It didn't give legal advice, but it explained the entire process as well as a lawyer could have done it. I couldn't have trained a staff member to have done something like that. And right. I mean, you have guardrails that limit what it can do, but it's really informational and it really does a lot. And it's better a lot of times than what my staff could even accomplish.
So there's no pressing a button. You're literally just having a conversation with an AI person, if you will, and it's going to interact with whoever's on the phone and answer questions.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you heard it says, well, I'm sorry, I'm a domestic violence situation. I'm sorry you're going through that.
Yeah, it
right?
gives them,
And you can change the empathy level. You can create friction, right? So I create friction so it's more difficult to get to a resident until you say, like, I've been thrown out of my house. It's a termination. It's a homeless situation. Whatever it is that you want to create so that it doesn't immediately, go to the representative every single time. And you can build in the empathy, and with the technology that's just changed in the last 3 weeks, the stuff you heard is actually old technology. I didn't have the ability, because I'm currently in Europe, I didn't have the ability to upload some of the current stuff, but it's getting to the point now where it's almost indistinguishable. And people are saying thank you. So at the end of the phone call, they're like, thank you very much. It's like you forget that you're not talking to a person.
That's what's interesting about this conversation. We could have had this webinar 2 weeks from now, and it could have been a totally different, like things change so quickly in this industry. How do you avoid like dead ends in that conversation with the AI bot, if you will? Like if someone asks something, like no matter what, it's going to be able to respond and redirect at some point to a representative?
It asks for more clarity. If it doesn't understand, it asks for more clarity. I said, well, I don't quite understand that. Can you ask that? And I don't quite understand what you mean by this or that. And it'll go to it. And the power is, and the light bulb went off in my head when I was sitting there and I was trying to build the IVR phone tree. And, the guy's like, well, ask it how much the rent is. So how much the rent? He goes, ask it another way without saying rent. Like, how much do I owe my landlord a month? And it told him, well, how much does it cost to live in this apartment a month? And it told me, right? You can ask it a million different ways. It actually understands what you're saying. And one of our challenges was creating something that can speak in English and Spanish at the same time.
Interesting.
Right? Because we live on the border with Mexico, right? Half of our conversation is in English and Spanish, right? It's interchangeable. And so training the bot so that it's actually speaking 2 languages simultaneously was kind of the challenge, but it's really turned out to be pretty great.
Through this training, how do you ensure that you're going to be comfortable with the responses that the AI is giving? Especially if it's a sensitive question, how do you just, is there a way to set that up at the beginning or train it?
Yeah. So what you do in the beginning, I mean, obviously it took us a while because we were the first, right? And so if anybody ever gets this system, you come from the benefit of what we've done, but then you can create it for what you want it to be, right? And how you want it to handle, certain questions. And like when you're training something, like it'll say your number and say your number 4,000 on the list, or like it would look at telephone numbers and read it out as millions, you know what I mean? And I mean, there's just things you need to do in order to train it to get through, certain hurdles, but it doesn't take very long to do so. And, you know, having access to the true data is really the most important thing. I mean, there's a lot of entities out there that are running around saying, oh yeah, we can set up a phone system, or we can set up a communication system. This is more of a communication system than a phone system, but it doesn't have access to the data. And so it's only giving you generic information about like where the headquarters is, you know, that kind of stuff. But it's not saying what your rent is. You know, I mean, you can ask, how does it calculate my rent? Right? How did you come up with $250 versus whatever? And you can have those conversations if you want to set up the bot to do those kind of things, right? It can get quite in depth. It's just to how much do you want it limited to be?
Right. Right.
And it never gets angry. And it never gets angry.
That's the good part. Yeah. We've got 5 minutes left, and I feel like we could talk about this for another hour, but I want to give everyone a chance to get a last word in. So I'm going to put you all on the spot, and I'm going to start with Jason. Give me the biggest opportunity in your mind and the biggest challenge with AI going forward for folks in the housing industry.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is easy. That is going to be accuracy. Just you want to make sure what the output is accurate. And we know about hallucinations, we know about things like that, but these are contained systems. So it's using data within a data set about the tenants or the residents. So we know it's contained somewhat. However, that is the biggest concern. As far as the biggest benefit, I think you're going to see efficiency and use of personnel. The jobs are going to change. I don't think they're going to be eliminated. I really genuinely don't. I just think things are going to change. You're going to have to upskill into a different world to know what's going on, but there are lots of opportunities here. I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Jerry, same question to you. Biggest opportunities going forward for your agency with AI and for the folks on the call, and biggest challenge.
Biggest opportunities I mean, everything's going to change. I really think you can run a housing authority our size, where I mean, when I started right now, I think Section 8 could probably be run with 12 people. Right now I have 30. Maybe 10, and probably more efficiently and more effectively. Does that mean I'm going to get rid of and downsize that? No, it just means that I think you can for what they're currently doing. The opportunities is going to be really using people to really help people with your brains, right? You're not going to be paid to lick stamps equivalently anymore. You're not being paid to sit there and answer the same question over and over again with an email. You're talking about really thinking about what you can do to help people and everything else. I don't know if I put shared. Can you guys see the phone number and everything else up there?
Yeah, you had brought it up. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. This is the company that I worked with that helped do all that. And so, I mean, and it's economical. I really think expanding this out into what I have now with the properties, this is going to save us millions upon millions of dollars a year at a fraction of that price. It takes away, my staff already loves the lack of frustration level that they're going through with having to answer the same question over and over again about research or wait list or anything else. Everything's going to change, guys. It's all going to change. It's going to be different jobs. It doesn't mean they're not going to be jobs. And I just want to say that. And the security, everybody always mentions security. A lot of the security has been fixed. It can be done very, very safely. You just need to make sure that they go through the right steps to make sure they're safe. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joanna, same question to you.
Okay, so I think the challenge is to continue to demonstrate ROI, right? And to be able to look at how this can help our organization in saving time and labor, but not necessarily replacing jobs, but be able to provide ways that they can do their job better so we can better serve our residents. And that leads us to the opportunity of being able to provide these tools to our residents. Right now, there are certain tools that are out there, some that are better, some that are not, that are available for the residents. And because of the different types of literacy levels, again, that we have our residents with elderly, disabled, and, of course, family people, we have young residents, we have all different kinds. I would like to see us be able to use AI in such a way that it's so helpful and so easy for them to be able to get information And what we're doing now is diversifying how people get in touch with us, not just through phones. And I want to expand on that, and I want to be able to provide that kind of service to our residents, not just through clearing time and making time available to our staff to serve our residents, but our residents to be able to feel comfortable enough that it's so easy that they can get answers quickly as well.
Thank you very much. Can't wait for part 2. I feel like if we had this again in a year, just to see the progression made in San Antonio and El Paso would be kind of interesting. But I just want to take this opportunity to again thank Jason, Gerald, and Joanna for spending the time today with us to answer some of these pretty difficult questions. There's a lot going on. It's the industry's changing constantly. So it could be overwhelming. So you guys did a great job of kind of bringing it home and putting it into the context of public and affordable housing. I just want to let everyone know before you sign off, if you haven't already, we will be sending a follow-up email with the recording and any additional assets or information that we discussed, including the company Jerry mentioned, some of the training certification and some of the guidelines that Joanna shared around creating policies, and also the decks that were also shared. So again, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it. And everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bye.